Welcome to Changing the Game, where we share leadership insights and inspiration from female professionals who are making a difference in their industry.
Hello, everyone. I'm Duren. Today, I'm joined by Elisa Padilla. Elisa is currently the Chief Marketing Officer for the New York Red Bulls, who just wrapped up an incredible season, making it to the MLS Cup Championship. Before taking on her current role in September 2023, Elisa has served in numerous leadership roles with the Miami Marlins and Rock Nation, just to name a few. And she even founded her own company, Kick It by EP, where she hosts a Lunchtime Conversation series with female leaders in order to inspire others to keep moving forward. I've listened to Elisa on some other podcasts, actually her most recent one last Thursday, the Choice Not Chance podcast. So check that out after this podcast today if you can. So I'm so excited to have her on today to share her wisdom. Welcome, Elisa.
Thank you so much, Jordan. I am so excited to be here with you and to have this conversation today.
Me too. I love, Elisa, to get the background story from our guest right away. So if you could just share a little bit about your story, maybe some experiences from your youth or early days that shaped the leader that you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am an inner city kid, born and raised in Newark, New Jersey. I am Puerto Rican. I'm one of six. And, I grew up in a household, in a very traditional Hispanic household where there were rules for boys and there were rules for girls. And the biggest rule, which is just so interesting as I look at my career, is that the girls weren't allowed to play sports. So very interesting because I'm the one, out of all my siblings, I'm the one that ended up working in sport.
Yeah.
But the greatest thing about sport and how it really played an integral part in my life is that my late brother was a high school basketball star, and our family outings were to go see him play basketball. He also ran track, so we would also go to his track meets. So sport has been an integral part of my upbringing, and my first job out of college was with the professional sports team. So, it's really interesting because like all the prep that I did, to go for the interview, and my biggest fear, Jordan, was that they were going to ask me if I was a basketball player, for what sport I played. So, that to me, that has been a key part of my career trajectory. And then my very first boss was someone who is my mentor till this day and who really, really influenced my career along the way. So I'm very, very lucky to have been working in sports for over 2 decades now. Not to date myself, Jordan.
A lot of knowledge and experience, though, that comes with that. So I think that's something to definitely hang your hat on. I think that's super interesting, actually. And I would love if you could clarify, because I myself don't know, and I'm sure some listeners don't know, is that a cultural thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So like you weren't like, it was, hey, the women do not play sports. It was for the boys.
Yeah. It was just, it was in our culture. And I think it's, now that I'm at my age and I am seeing my nieces and my nephews with their kids, it was definitely a generational thing. Okay. And there were, traditions where, the girls behaved one way and the boys behaved another. And playing sport was definitely one of the things where it's just like, well, that's not what girls do, So it's like, okay, here are your dolls, right? And it's like, we'll have a doll party for you, right? But it's just very interesting. And it's also from, stereotypes, right? It's just like, you're Hispanic, I can't tell you, Jordan, how many times people meet me and the second question out of their mouth is, well, how many kids do you have? Well, it's just like, well, I don't have any kids, right? It's just like, because they make that assumption that because you're Hispanic, that you have kids. So it's just very interesting. But look, I think that the way that I was raised, my parents, even though it was very strict, there, the one thing that was for all was education, right? So it's something that in our family, I'm an educator, at heart. And what I mean by that is I consider myself to be a life learner, and education was important for all of us. So there weren't any like, rules around that, which I think is really great.
Yeah, that is awesome. And was it surprising for your family then for you to take such a liking to sports, seeing your brother play and then go the sports route professionally?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's funny, right? Because now I have nieces and nephews that are much older, and, they're a fan of a team because that's the team that I worked for. Like when I worked for the Nets, it was just like, my younger nieces and nephews are now Nets fans. And it's just like, well, it's your fault because that's where you worked, right? So, and I think that working for a sports team and also working for an entertainment venue, when you're able to share your experiences with the next generation, it's just something that, I'm so grateful that my position has forwarded me to provide those experiences to my nieces and nephews, and also friends, friends and their family as well.
That's amazing. I love that you really see the impact that you're making not only on your nieces and nephews, but
Yeah.
the next generation to come of sports fans.
Yeah.
That is so cool. So did you knew you wanted to work in sports then? Did you know it was marketing?
So it's so interesting because I didn't take I didn't take a marketing course in undergrad until my senior year fall semester. So I originally, Jordan, thought that I wanted to work in television, not in front of the camera, but behind the camera. I wanted to be, I wanted to be on the technical side. And I, as part of my undergraduate degree, I had to do an internship, and I did it at a network. And I was in the programming department, and I was like, I don't like this part of it. However, I sat next to the ad sales folks, and they worked with the marketing folks. And I was like, half the time, I was like, what are they doing? Right? Like, I want to learn, I want to understand what they're doing. And then when I went back to school my fall semester, I took Marketing 101, and I fell in love with it. And the reason that I love marketing and why I fell in love with it is the psychological part of it, right? It's when you're in marketing, you're making people believe that they need what you're selling, right? And it's really, I love how the influencing part of marketing and working in sports is building that community, right? Because in sport, you're selling an experience. You don't know the outcome of the game, right? So it's like, how do you get that share of wallet by making, not making, by influencing consumer behavior to make them believe that if they're going to spend any money on a sporting event, they need to come to, now in my current position, they must come to a New York Red Bulls game because that they're going to have an incredible experience.
Yeah, I think one thing you mentioned, taking that internship in college, and not knowing it was marketing at the time, maybe taking one marketing class. I mean, here at Shift Group and on this show, I work with a lot of candidates who don't know what the next step in their career is, or after their sport ends or their military service ends. And I always try to hit home, and I think my guests do a great job of doing this, is that you don't know where that next opportunity is going to come from, or where that door will open for you. And so just saying yes to opportunities and seeing what you learn, I think is so important for young professionals.
Absolutely. And I also think what's really, really important, Jordan, and this is from my experience, is to know what you don't want to do, right? I took that internship thinking, okay, television is one thing. And I was like, no, I don't want to work in television. That's not what I want to do. So I was able to cross that off my list. And I think, knowing what you don't want to do is as equally as important as knowing what you want to do, because when you start, saying, okay, that's not for me, that's not for me, that's not for me, it actually gives you clarity on, the opportunities that you want to pursue or the things that may be good for you.
I am such a believer in that. Amen. My career hasn't been that long yet, but I do know what I don't want to do based on things that I've tried so far.
That's awesome. That's great. I love it.
So I'm fully on board with that advice. And that's actually a good segue. So you started your career in media. You were a marketing manager with HBO. You eventually now rose to become a chief marketing officer. Can you walk us through that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started a little bit before my time at HBO. I worked for a sports team prior to that. And I always, there's just something about being in sport that is really, where my passion lies. And I think it's that sense of community. And again, like I said earlier, in sport, you're selling an experience. When I worked for HBO Sports, what was really, really interesting is I worked on the boxing business, right? So it was all, I learned so much about multicultural marketing. I learned that, whether it was Oscar De La Hoya fighting Floyd Mayweather, right? That was like the biggest pay-per-view event ever. The way that you spoke to Latinos versus Black men versus, Caucasian men or, different audiences was very, very eye-opening. And it was all based on, okay, if you couldn't fly to Las Vegas to be part of this event live, what was going to get you to push the button on your cable, on your remote to purchase the pay-per-view event? So I think that position really, really opens my eyes to not in marketing. And when you're selling something, not one size fits all. So I think, and that was television, right? And drilling down not only to television, but it was also pay-per-view because the majority of the HBO fights were on pay-per-view. And then taking that experience and working for AT&T where, okay, back then it was just like, okay, the cell phones were now the third screen, right? And I was like, okay, now I have to learn how to market to people on cell phones, right? Because now in 2024, I mean, no one leaves their house. It's like their house keys and their cell phone, right? Before their purse or, or wallet. So it was really, really interesting because that time at AT&T really taught me about churn, how people what did we have to do as a provider to keep our customers. And I also learned there that it was cheaper to keep your current customers than to go out and get new customers. So that the opportunity at AT&T was really the door that opened up the doors for me to join the Nets at the time. And it's just very, very interesting that as I look back in my career, Jordan, there are like key learnings along every stop that really helped me get to the level where I am today, aside from obviously the hard work, the commitment, the hustle that it takes. But there are things to, again, when you think about your customer or your target audience and your target consumer, understanding what drives them from a behavioral perspective is so important. And then how the marketing campaign comes to life and how you use all that data and you merge all of that. Those are the things that, I learned along the way that now I'm able to, work with my team to say, okay, you know what? Our season opener, for example, is coming up. What are the things that we have to think about from a consumer standpoint? The time of year, what day is it? Are we targeting families? Are we targeting social folks? Like, what are the things what's the information that we need to get from our business intelligence group to be able to formulate a plan to ultimately garner sales to hit our KPIs?
Yeah. Amazing. I could listen to you talk about your journey, the learnings along the way. There's so many, and there's so many that we could drill into. So in your current role, with the New York Red Bulls, you just obviously had an incredibly successful playoff run, making it all the way to the MLS Cup Finals. So congratulations on that. Amazing. When you're thinking about capitalizing on this momentum of a great season and who you're maybe speaking to, you mentioned like, hey, it's for AT&T, obviously completely different industry, but cheaper to keep customers rather than find new ones. How are you turning moments like this, like a great playoff run, into opportunities to energize the current fan base, strengthen their loyalty, but also maybe go after those new fans as well? Are you thinking about both?
Yeah, we're actually thinking about both, and each segment, right, has different levers, right? So for our current fans, it's okay, we need to retain them, we need to get them back, and now we've set the expectation within the club that, you know what, making the playoffs is one thing, but now the expectation is that we're going to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. We're going to make it to the MLS Cup because we were there, right? We experienced that this year. And it was incredible to see, if I may, for one moment, MLS Cup was hosted in LA, and it was so heartwarming to see so many New York Red Bull fans travel cross country to be on a 6-hour flight to cheer on the team, right? So having that experience, those are moments that we can capitalize on as we start thinking about the 2025 season, to remind them of, okay, you know what? We were one of 2 teams that were able to play in that weekend, and we played. So I think that it's reigniting those memories, because for sure the MLS Cup is definitely a core memory. And then on the flip side of that, we can use that same, momentum and same excitement to break through the clutter here in our market to, okay, if you want nonstop action, if you want an affordable night out with your family, and if you want to really, really see, another team that made it to the playoffs here in New York City or in the metro area, the New York Red Bulls are the place to be. So there's similarities, but still we have to be very intentional as to what is really going to evoke the emotion for the consumer.
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting time to be a soccer fan or a football fan in the US. I know it's growing quickly. And it's exciting. I mean, I've always been a casual fan. My husband's a big fan of soccer. So it's fun to see the excitement grow around it.
Yeah. And I mean, MLS had tremendous growth in 2024. And it's a really, really exciting time to be part of the sport. And I think that one of the things that I've learned is, you know what, again, it's like 90 minutes of nonstop action. Like from the minute you sit down, the players on the pitch are working to, get that goal. And it's so exciting to see. And, leading up to World Cup in 2026, when all eyes across the world are going to be, in our area, I think it's just really a great time to be part of the sport.
Yeah, agreed. And Elisa, you've mentioned community a few times earlier in this conversation. It's obvious community is very important to you. Do you feel, looking forward for not only the New York Red Bulls, but leading your teams, do you lead through the lens of community? And can you just share a little bit more about your commitment to community?
Yeah, so I think community is so important, right? Jordan, and I think I look at it from multiple lenses, right? So if I'm looking at it from a professional lens in soccer, in my current role, right, I think of, we are a team that is we're your local team, right? And when I think about where you can come and celebrate and feel the passion for sport, I think about Sports Illustrated Stadium is the place where you can come on a Saturday night with your friends, with your family. You can have a great culinary experience, right? Because we have great food at the stadium, and you're able to really cheer on right? The players on the pitch. So, and be with other people that share that same passion. I think that's really, really important. And then when I think about community, within my team, it's making sure that we're all aligned in the vision, that everyone is bringing their expertise to the table, because our job is to make sure that there's a connectivity and an affinity from the job that we're doing on a daily basis to the community, to get people in to celebrate this beautiful game of soccer. And then when I think about, personally, community, I think about, the people that I wish that I had or that I wanted to be when I was growing up, right? And I think about being like-minded and having the same values, or, thinking about growing the next generation of leaders in the same manner, and being respectful of what everyone brings to the table. Because one of the things in working in sport, it's, predominantly very male dominated industry. And, one of the things that I've learned along the way is that, there's a table long enough for all of us to sit at. And I think that women supporting women is really, really important. And I think that in sport, while, there may not be a lot of women, in the C-suite, the ones that are there, we have to support each other and find community, within ourselves, to make sure that we're empowering and supporting one another.
Amen. I think, Elisa, that was one of the reasons the show was started in the first place, was to encourage more women to not only have those professional goals, but go after them and help others, and to open the door for others, to let other women in the room as well. Yeah. I think you had mentioned mentorship early on in our conversation too, community. How would you encourage women who have these professional dreams of being a leader? How would you encourage them to authentically find their community, or maybe find a mentor that helps them in their career?
Yeah, I think that, if you're just starting out in your career, who are the people around you? Who are you working with, that you can, identify a person, whether it's your manager, whether it's a coworker, who, is going to open up doors for you. And what I mean by that is give you visibility to things that potentially maybe you're not seeing, right? That maybe there's an opportunity to say, okay, you know what? You need to go speak to this person, right? Because this person is going to be able to help you, in this way. And I'll share with you one of the things that, again, very early in my career, I learned was I had someone say to me, he said, partnerships are a two-way street. He said, it is very, very important that even though you're just starting out, he's like, I'm learning from you the same way that you're learning from me. And I think, Jordan, that's one of the things that, to the point of those that are looking, to wherever you are in your career, just know that partnerships is a two-way street. And if you're open to learning, you're definitely going to be able to learn from other people, and other people are going to learn from you. And that's part of the growth process. But if you're not open to that, you're not going to see that, and you're not going to see the possibilities. Like, I think about, the folks on my team who are much younger than me. Every day, Jordan, every day I'm learning something from them, because it's like the world is different now, right? The world that they've grown up in is so different than the world that I grew up in, that, yes, I can teach them, but certainly they can teach me, and they teach me on a daily basis.
I 100% agree with that. I think you can learn something from everybody. And I love that partnership as a two-way street. I think a lot of young candidates I work with, they're searching for a mentor, but they don't feel like they have much to offer sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's true. I think if you show up with openness and authenticity and the desire to learn, like you said, I think it could absolutely be a successful partnership, no matter how much experience one party has.
Absolutely. And I think, you know what? I think everyone has something to teach or share with others, because we all experience life so differently. right? It's like your journey has been completely different than my journey. So it doesn't matter, what position you're in, what position I'm in. We're going to learn from one another because we experience the world completely differently.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I can't believe we only have 5 minutes left. So like, this has been amazing. So there's a couple of questions I really want to get
Absolutely.
to on your Lunchtime Conversation series, Kick It with EP. I want to dive into that.
Yes.
I love the concept. I think it's so cool. I want to know what inspired you to start your Lunchtime Conversation series, and really how has it impacted your own journey?
Yeah. So, 2020, so, the world turned upside down and I was furloughed, Jordan, and I, after crying and like saying like, okay, like what happens now? The next day I went out for a walk with my dog and I thought to myself, I want to turn a negative into a positive. And I want to be able to inspire people. I want to be able to educate people and I want to be able to pay it forward. And you know what? That day I was like, okay, you know what? I need to learn new skills. And IG Live was like the biggest thing that had just like launched during that time. And I was like, I'm going to do it. And I'm like, I'm going to start doing a conversation every day for 20 minutes. And then I quickly learned that every day was not sustainable. So I then scaled down to 2 days a week. And, I interviewed over 125 women. And the platform is rooted in inspiring people, educating people, and paying it forward. It's 20 minutes, so it's snackable content. And it's really about putting goodness into the world and giving a platform for women to share their stories to help others. I have been on hiatus for the last year since I took this job with the New York Red Bulls, but I'm coming back in January. At the end of January, we are coming back to host IG Live's Lunchtime Conversation on Mondays.
I love that. And so it's Kick It by EP on
Yep.
Instagram. Is that where people need to tune in then?
Yep. Kick It by EP on Instagram, 12 noon, launching January 20th. 20 minutes. So if you're eating at your desk or whatever it is, just pop into IG Live and take a listen.
Snackable content. I love that. I think your story with starting your Lunchtime Conversation series it's so cool. I think 2020 was a hard time for a lot of us. And I think just your journey of giving yourself that opportunity to grieve, being furloughed, and then taking a look at, hey, how can I turn this into a positive? I mean, do you feel like you always had that ability in you? Is that something you learned? Like, hey, I'm going to make the best of this worst scenario. Where did you learn that?
So, you know what, Jordan, I learned that. So in August of 2019, I lost my dad, and I never thought that day would come. And I know that sounds very naive because I had experienced loss before, but I never imagined a world where I wouldn't have my father. And it was like life went on. Like people were like kept living. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like heartbroken. I'm like, I don't even know if I can make it like the next day. Anyway, that's a long way of saying that I think that loss and my inner voice saying you have to keep going and my eyes being opened, even though I was like in such darkness because of, mourning him and the grief that I was feeling, that it's like life goes on. So I feel like in April of 2020, when the furlough came, that was the second big hit. And I thought to myself, okay, like now it's like you have to make the best of it, because my father made the best of every situation. And I feel, Jordan, that my life, I want to live out his legacy and I want to be the best person that I can be. And he was he was such a positive person that I want to be able to give, that back into the world, because I want to live out his legacy every day.
That's an incredible story, Elisa. Thank you for sharing that. That's
Yeah.
That's so touching, and you're definitely living out his legacy, and you can see it, making the best of every situation. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, of course. And I can't believe we're at time. I have so many questions I still want to ask you. So maybe we can do a part 2 sometime in the future. But to wrap us up, Elisa, thank you so much for your time. I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
Because as I mentioned, this show was started to encourage women to go after their professional goals. If you could give one piece of advice to either young female marketers or really any young female professionals who are aspiring to lead at any level, what advice would you give them?
My advice to the young leaders of tomorrow is to be authentic, be yourself, because your superpower is that there's only one you.
There's only one you. That's such good advice. Such good advice. Elisa, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. This was phenomenal. I'd love to encourage our listeners to connect with you on LinkedIn. I know you're pretty active on the platform. Follow you on Instagram, Kick It by EP, for the Lunchtime Conversation starting January 20th. Thank you again for your time. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jordan. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for inspiring us. And thank you for having me. This has been fantastic. Thank you.
Of course. We'll chat soon. Thank you, everyone, for listening.